For joining us this morning. You've heard us this morning, and you've been serving in Congress since 1981, so you have lived through some of these government shutdowns. So how do you think this one ends?
Bad. I don't think any American can feel happy about the situation we confront right now. This shutdown, every economist predicts, is going to be costly to the economy, dangerous to our national security, and undermine the confidence of the American people and of the people who work for them in the United States government. This is a policy that is very negative, very harmful, and rejected by approximately 3/4 of the American people as a strategy that ought to be pursued. So no American ought to be happy today. This shutdown, which is the first in 17 years. The last shutdown we had, of course, was under a similar scenario. Republicans in the Congress of the United States, particularly in the House of Representatives, were confronting a president of the other party, Bill Clinton, and said, if you don't do it our way, we won't do it. And that's what's happened here. And that's not the way democracy ought to work. In this instance in particular, as I know previous people have said, we've agreed to a number for interim funding for the government at the levels set by our Republican colleagues. They won't take yes for an answer, and it's a very sad day for America.
Is there any face-saving way for the Republicans to back themselves out of this corner, or is this our way or the highway?
Well, I'd like to think there was a face-saving way, and we need to think about a face-saving way, but Speaker Boehner and Leader Cantor have to, frankly, give some help on that as to what direction they think they can move. Their constant focus, their destructive obsession, as I call it, with repealing the Affordable Care Act, with which they don't agree. We know they don't agree with it. The American public knew in the election they didn't agree with it. But the American people reelected the sponsor of that bill, Barack Obama. They reelected and, in fact, expanded the majority of the United States Senate that adopted that piece of legislation. So it is unreasonable and irrational, in my opinion, to simply reject the voters of America who made a choice just a few months ago and say, if you don't agree with us now, we're going to shut down the government, which is what has happened.
But standing the way that it was passed ushered in the Tea Party and spawned the Tea Party. So they have constituents, too, at this point. And I know both sides have the Republicans, we've decided that they're in the wrong here. But, the president at some point, do you just think between now and 2014 he just doesn't talk to the House at all, to the Tea Party House at all, because these are people he just can't possibly talk to? It's just going to be day in and day out at another college campus with everyone laughing and nodding as he bashes the Republicans day in and day out. Is that what we're looking at till 2014?
Joe, that's not an acceptable strategy, and you know that, and I know that. We have a country for which we are responsible. We pledged an oath to respond effectively and positively to running that country on behalf of the American people. So that's not a strategy. We've got to sit down. We've got to talk. Very frankly, we wanted to do that on the budget, as you know. 6 months ago, 3 months ago, 4 months ago, we asked to go to conference on the budget so we could reach a number and come to an agreement. There's been a refusal by the Republicans in both the Senate and the House to do that. But no, you're absolutely right. The President and the Democrats, for that matter, as well as the Republicans, have a responsibility. But we have a responsibility, and I think the American people understand that, to come to common ground in places where that is possible.
Yeah.
Not simply to say, the election occurred, but we're going to ignore the election's results.
Standy, assuming you believe the other side is completely irrational, and we'll just...
Let me say, Joe, let me say something, because I'm glad you raised that. The Tea Party, I think, is a relatively small faction of the Republican conference right now. I would say it's anywhere between 30, as small as 30 and as large as 60. The problem is not that the Tea Party, who say that they're representing constituents, let's assume for the sake of argument that that's true. But there are 150 to 160, 170 Republicans who are not in that place, but are allowing themselves to be led around by Ted Cruz and the most radical element of their party. That is not acceptable. It can't happen in a responsible democracy.
Stanley, assuming you believe that entire group then is irrational, if that's what you believe, is there anything that you can do, anything that the Democrats can do that they can offer as a fig leaf, as an olive branch, as an anything to try to get this across the finish line?
Well, I think we have a responsibility to find out what would do it. But right at this point in time, Joe, you know my M.O. I do exactly that, and I think that's what we need to do in a democracy. But I have not yet found that element that they would agree to, because they've been so adamant. The only option for them is to repeal or delay the Affordable Care Act. And when they say delay 1 year, and that sounds reasonable, none of us believe on our side of the aisle they're going to change their opinion in 12 months. They haven't changed it in 24 months or 36 months. Right. They're not going to change their opinion. So now we're going to be confronting, as you know, the debt limit extension. Then, assuming at some point in time we pass this legislation, we're either going to be facing a November 15th or December 15th deadline, and that demand will be the same. It would be irrational for us to think if you do this, the next time will be easier. It hasn't proved to be the case.
Yeah. All right. Actually, Andrew asked a couple of those. I don't know which ones you liked and didn't like. I'll take if they were all okay. I'll take credit for them. But you know what I saw most recently? So University of Maryland, I saw was like in the top 5 party schools. That I did not. I went to Colorado, so I get tarnished with that every time it comes out. But
if we're going to go to the University of Maryland, let's go to their 4-0. They beat West Virginia 37 to nothing.
You're right. That's right, because West Virginia is pretty good. You're right. But
West Virginia beat Oklahoma State, and they were 11. So if we're going to focus on the University of Maryland, let's focus on the positive.
And my fundraising for that stat. I mean, they got a boomer Esiason. I've said this before. I'm still working on that Steny Hoyer. It's a big campus. I don't see why we couldn't have a little statue. Something. What about like
You're my man.
What about like a Heisman pose? Heisman. Can you see Steny? You'll post.
Well, that's a little levity at a time when unfortunately there's not much to be happy about.
I hear you, but I know I can get you to, we try to end on a
I appreciate that, Joe, very much.
All right.
Always with a smile. Thanks, Steny. We appreciate it.